Hello Internet, my name is Lave and I watched First Reformed. Now I've got to give a shout out to one of my subscribers who made me aware of this film about a month ago. They commented saying that I should check this one out, so shout out to Callie C. I looked into it and discovered that this one is written and directed by Paul Schrader, who's most famously known for writing Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, and this film definitely feels like he's going back to basics, which stars Ethan Hawke as a man with a troubled past but is now the priest of a small but historic church in Middle America, which is about to celebrate its 250-year anniversary. Now, aside from getting the church ready for the big event, he doesn't have much to do. It's pretty much a souvenir shop at this stage until one day one of his churchgoers called Mary asks him to speak to her troubled husband. Now, that's all I'm going to say because it's one of those films where I think the less you know about it, the better it will be. So I'm going to keep it vague, but I do have a spoilery question for those who have seen it, which I'll ask at the end of this video, so stick around if you have seen it till the end of this vid. So I like this film quite a bit, especially how old school it feels, from the opening title credits, which are simple but bold, to the aspect ratio they've chosen to film in. I mean, Ethan Hawke's character even narrates in this film, and that's something that we don't see much of these days, or at least done very well, which is used in this to really examine the psyche of this character as he's keeping a journal of events that we see unfold. And Ethan Hawke is brilliant in this film. I really admire him as an actor. He consciously chooses to do smaller independent films like this. When he's not playing the goody two-shoes or the innocent character, he does sometimes play emotionally tormented characters. If you think of films like Predestination and even the Magnificent Seven remake. But this performance is next level stuff for him. It's brilliant. It's incredibly nuanced. On the outside, he's very calm and he speaks with a softly spoken but gruff voice. But under the surface, you can see emotions bubbling away, and they do bubble to the surface. The supporting cast are great too. You've got Cedric the entertainer, who's playing another priest and Ethan Hawke's mentor in this. It's the most down-to-earth role I've ever seen from him, and the same can be said for Amanda Seyfried's character, who's playing Mary. Again, it's another understated but very good performance. But a very special mention has to go to an actor I haven't heard of before. I think his name's Phillip Ettinger. He plays Mary's husband in this and has a key scene with Ethan Hawke's character where they're discussing the future of Earth and mankind's involvement in the environment. And it has huge ramifications for the rest of the film. But again, that's venturing into spoilers, so I'm going to leave it there. What I will say, though, is that this film is simultaneously an intimate look and deconstruction of this character, but it's also commentating on larger themes like the environment and politics and corporate agendas and kids today and the world they're growing up in, and importantly, how faith and the church fits into it, the role that plays, but from the perspective of a man who himself doesn't really understand himself. He's broken. So the question becomes, how does this broken man fix this broken world? It's definitely out there, this film. It certainly goes there. It's not going to be to everyone's taste, and it's definitely open to interpretation. Now, before I get into my interpretation of it, I want to go back and talk about the director, Paul Schrader, who is definitely in his element, especially when it comes to the film's presentation, which lacks a score apart from a few key scenes, but when it does kick in, I didn't find it intrusive. It fits the scene very well. But on a visual standpoint, I already mentioned the 1.37 to 1 aspect ratio, which adds to that sense of claustrophobia, but it's also his framing, which is asymmetrical. It's always just off center or off kilter. But what I find most interesting about this film is that 90% of it is shot from a static camera. It never moves. It may cut to a different angle in the same scene, but again, it's always from a static camera, apart from a few key scenes which I'll get into in my spoiler talk section. So for now, That's my thoughts on First Reformed, and pause the video if you want to take a closer look at my enjoyment tracker now. So the comparisons between this film and Taxi Driver are not unwarranted. They are cut from the same cloth, but that's not a reason not to go and see this film. I think if you like Taxi Driver, you will like this. So let's get into the spoiler talk. So if you've seen the film, then stick around. If you haven't seen the film, go away, go and watch it. As I say, this film is definitely open to interpretation, and this is my initial thoughts. And what's interesting, when I was walking out of the cinema, I was eavesdropping on other people talking about it who said that he's losing his faith in God. Now, I didn't read it like that at all. I think he's very much got his faith in God. He even says it at one point that he's not losing his faith in God, at least. He is losing his faith in humanity. Now, what kicks it all off is his meeting with Michael, who we discover is an environmentalist who plans to kill himself with a suicide vest. Now, in their meeting, Michael asks Ethan Hawke's character, will God forgive us? And he gives a textbook answer straight away. He's like, who knows what God is thinking? The answer to despair is courage. And that's where Ethan Hawke's journey just goes a bit skew-whiffed and a bit distorted. Now, going back to the camera movement and why I think it's relevant, aside from the opening shot of the film, which is a tracking shot of the church emerging from the darkness like the morning dawn, there is very little camera movement. The next time I noticed it is when he goes out on a bike ride with Mary, and he's loosening up a bit, and it's our first hint that he might be attracted to her and that she might be his saving grace. And I think that is a part of the film where reality and fantasy begin to merge, because the next time we see any camera movement is right after he's watched some of the suicide footage online, and then Mary just pops up at his house, and then they sit down and then they have their magical mystery tour where she lies on top of him, then they start floating and the camera pans around them, and then it goes into a dream sequence where we see images of Earth in paradise, and then it quickly descends into hell-like images with industrial buildings everywhere and man-made pollution. Now, I think this camera movement is a reflection of him falling into madness, into this dream-like state, which I think is further confirmed in the very last scene when he's deciding whether to go through with blowing up his congregation or not, when again Mary pops up out of nowhere after he's chastised himself, and then they embrace in this Hollywood overblown kiss when the camera is literally swirling around them in a really over-exaggerated kiss. I think his reality has become his fantasy, and yeah, he's an unreliable narrator. That's my thoughts on the film anyway. I've only seen it once and I definitely need to see it again. I probably will be buying this one on Blu-ray where I can really dissect it further. I think people studying film are going to be studying this alongside Taxi Driver. So that's my thoughts on First Reformed. If you've seen it, please let me know what you thought of it down in the comments. I'm interested to discuss this one further. I don't think I'm going to be doing any reviews for the next few days, so if you're expecting a review for Skyscraper or Mamma Mia 2, I just don't have time to see them, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. My next review is probably going to be Mission Impossible or something like that, so please keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, thanks very much for watching this review. I really do appreciate it. If you can, give this video a like, and don't forget to share the Lave. Subscribe.